The email arrived at 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday. The ping was innocuous, just one of 100 notifications I'd received that day, but the subject line froze the blood in my veins, announcing our new senior vice president, Julian Croft. I didn't need to open it. I knew what it would say. It would be filled with corporate praise, words like vision, leadership, and unprecedented success. It would mention the triumph of our latest campaign, the Echo Project, as the key driver of his promotion. My project, my brainchild, my name wouldn't be mentioned once. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It tasted like ash. Through the glass wall of my office, I could see him. Julian, standing in the middle of the open-plan workspace, basking in the applause. He caught my eye, and for a fraction of a second, the charismatic smile he reserved for clients and executives vanished. It was replaced by a smirk, a tiny, almost imperceptible lift at the corner of his mouth. Then he gave a slow, deliberate nod. It was a confession and a challenge, all in one silent gesture. I took it, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Standing beside him, laughing and shaking his hand, was Leo Vance, Julian's perfectly coiffed protégé, a junior strategist who thought a killer smile was a substitute for a killer idea. 3 months ago, the Echo Project was just a file on my desktop, a 200-page deep dive into a new theory of brand strategy I'd been developing for years. It wasn't about selling a product. It was about creating a feeling, an emotional resonance that echoed long after the ad was over. It was my life's work, distilled into a single, revolutionary concept. I presented it to Julian in a one-on-one meeting. He leaned back in his leather chair, steepled his fingers, and listened. When I finished, my voice hoarse with passion, he nodded slowly. "It's theoretical, Camilla," he'd said, his tone laced with that specific brand of condescending dismissal he was famous for. "A bit academic. Clients want to see numbers, not feel echoes." He killed it on the spot, or so I thought. A week later, he called me into his office. "You know that echo idea?" he said, not looking up from his monitor. "Send me the deck. I want to see if there are any small pieces we can salvage for the quarterly review." Like a fool, I did it. I sent him the executive summary, a 30-slide deck that outlined the core philosophy and the strategy for Phase 1. I thought, at best, he might use a single slide. At worst, it would die a quiet death on his hard drive. I never imagined he'd take the entire concept, rebrand it as his own, and present it to the board a week later. He didn't just steal my work. He began a quiet campaign to erase me from its history. I was slowly squeezed out of important meetings. My direct reports were reassigned to more urgent projects. When colleagues asked what I was working on, I was forced to talk about market analysis for minor accounts, while the project that was my very soul was being celebrated down the hall. Julian's narrative was subtle but effective. Camilla was a great ideas person, but she lacked the practical skills to execute. He was the one who could take her academic concepts and turn them into gold. The final betrayal came 2 weeks ago when I confronted him privately. I cornered him in the break room after hours, my hands shaking. "The Echo Project," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's my work, Julian." He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He turned from the coffee machine, a smug look on his face. "Camilla, ideas are cheap," he said, his voice calm and patronizing. "Execution is everything. You had a sketch. I built a skyscraper. The world doesn't reward architects who can only draw. It rewards the ones who build things that touch the sky. You should be grateful your idea saw the light of day at all." He took a sip of his espresso. "This is how the game is played. Maybe one day you'll learn." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my dark apartment, the skyline of New York a glittering testament to ambition, and I felt a despair so profound it was a physical weight. He hadn't just stolen my project. He had stolen my voice, my future. He had painted me as incompetent, a dreamer incapable of action. Quitting felt like the only option, but it also felt like letting him win. It would validate his story about me. And then, in the pre-dawn quiet, a thought surfaced. It was a tiny spark at first, then a growing fire. The executive summary, the 30-slide deck I'd sent him. It was a brilliant summary, but that's all it was. It was the what, but not the how. It perfectly explained the theory and the goals for Phase 1, but it contained nothing about the complex psychological triggers and data analytics required for Phase 2. I rushed to my laptop, my heart hammering against my ribs. I opened the original file, the one he'd never seen. The Echo Project Master 200 PGS, DocX. I scrolled past the introduction, past the Phase 1 strategy he had so successfully stolen, and there it was. Phase 2, the resonance engine. 100 pages of dense, intricate strategy on how to translate the initial emotional echo into lasting brand loyalty. using predictive behavioral modeling and sentiment analysis. It was the heart of the entire project, the part that would make it not just a successful campaign, but a legendary one. And he had no idea it existed. The anger I'd been choking on for months didn't disappear, but it changed. The despair evaporated, replaced by a quiet, Arctic calm. The game wasn't over. He thought he knew the rules, but he was playing checkers while I was about to set up a chessboard. My plan began to form, elegant in its simplicity. I wouldn't expose him. I wouldn't go to HR. That would be my word against a senior vice president's. No, I would do something far more effective. I would help him. I would play the part of the defeated but loyal employee. I would offer my support to Leo, his chosen successor for the project. I would feed them just enough information from Phase 1 to make them feel confident. I would give them data, charts, and encouragement. I would give them a map, but a map with a few crucial roads missing. I would watch them drive full speed into a dead end of their own making. Julian believed execution was everything. Fine. I was going to let him execute. I was going to give him just enough rope, not to hang himself, but to tie himself in a knot so complex he'd never get out. He wanted to build a skyscraper from my sketch. I was about to become the building inspector who knew the foundation was made of sand. The next morning, I walked into Sterling and Finch with a smile on my face for the first time in months. I walked over to Julian's desk, past the congratulatory balloons and cards. He looked up, surprised. "Julian," I said, my voice bright and clear. "Congratulations, truly, it's well-deserved." He was momentarily speechless, caught off guard by my surrender. "Thank you, Camilla," he managed, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "I know I've been distant lately," I continued, injecting a note of weary resignation into my voice. "I was disappointed, I'll admit it, but you were right. An idea is nothing without the right person to bring it to life. If there's anything I can do to help Leo with Phase 2, please let me know. I want to see the project succeed." The suspicion in his eyes melted away, replaced by the familiar glint of arrogance. He saw a broken employee accepting her place. He saw victory. He didn't see the truth. He didn't see the architect of his downfall standing right in front of him. He thought he'd won the game. He didn't realize he'd just made his first move in mine. He'd only read the first chapter of a story I was about to finish. My performance began the next day. I became a ghost in the machine, a model of quiet mediocrity. I started arriving at 10 a.m., holding a latte like a shield. I took a full hour for lunch. I left promptly at 5. My work was competent but uninspired. I completed my assigned tasks on the minor accounts, submitted my reports on time, and offered no new ideas in meetings. I was fading into the beige corporate wallpaper, and Julian loved every minute of it. He saw it as proof of his dominance, a confirmation that he had broken my spirit. My support for Leo was a masterclass in malicious compliance. He'd approach my desk, a nervous energy thrumming beneath his designer suit, and ask for guidance on Phase 2. I would pull up the data from Phase 1, the beautiful, soaring metrics of success, and offer my insights. "See this spike in engagement?" I'd say, pointing to a graph. "That came right after the celebrity influencer push. The data suggests the market responds to aspirational figures. For Phase 2, you should double down on that. Go bigger. More celebrities, more high-production value content." It was the perfect trap. The data was real. The celebrity posts did cause a spike, but it was a shallow spike, a sugar rush of fleeting attention. The real, sustained engagement, the emotional echo of the project's title, came from the user-generated content campaign that ran concurrently. It came from the quiet, powerful stories of everyday people. That was the soul of the project, the engine for Phase 2. By pointing Leo toward the glittering distraction of celebrities, I was handing him a compass that pointed south and telling him it was north. He was too arrogant and inexperienced to question it. He saw the easy, flashy answer and grabbed it with both hands. His emails became my primary source of evidence. At first, they were casual. "Hey Cam, can you send me the numbers on the Q3 influencer spend?" But as the weeks went on, a subtle note of panic crept in. He was out of his depth, and he knew it. "Camilla," one email read, sent at 11:47 p.m. "Just wanted to run this by you. For the Phase 2 tagline, Julian and I are thinking something like 'Live the Dream.' It connects to the aspirational theme we discussed. Just need you to confirm my thinking aligns with the initial project goals." I stared at the screen. Live the Dream was the antithesis of the Echo project. The entire point was to reflect a reality, not sell a fantasy. I typed back a simple, cheerfully unhelpful reply. "Sounds catchy, Leo. It definitely aligns with the celebrity-focused direction. Looks like you're on the right track. Best, see, each email was another nail. I created a folder in my personal account, hidden from the company network, titled Project Scaffolding. I saved every message, every request for validation, every clueless question. It was a digital diary of their incompetence. The only person who seemed to see through my act was Evelyn, a senior data analyst from the floor below. She was in her late 50s, sharp as a tack, and had a built-in immunity to corporate nonsense. She'd been at the agency for 20 years and had seen dozens of Julians come and go. One afternoon, she cornered me by the coffee machine. "I don't buy it," she said, her voice low. "Buy what?" I asked, feigning innocence as I stirred my tea. "This defeated act. You're not a quitter, Camilla. I've read your work. The person who wrote the analytics forecast for the P&G account doesn't just roll over and die. So what's the game?" I looked into her intelligent, knowing eyes and made a split-second decision. I couldn't tell her everything, not yet, but I could give her a piece of the truth. "Let's just say I'm observing a live experiment in strategic implementation," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "I'm very interested to see the results." Evelyn held my gaze for a moment longer, then a slow smile spread across her face. "Well," she said, turning to leave, "if you need any specific data points for your experiment, you know where to find me." Julian, meanwhile, was becoming more insufferable than ever. At a company-wide town hall, he stood on stage and gave a 10-minute speech about the importance of authenticity and team collaboration, citing the Echo project as a prime example. "We succeed," he declared, his voice ringing with false sincerity, "because we value every voice. We lift each other up." An hour later, I saw him tear a strip off a new intern in the hallway because she'd used the wrong font size on a memo. The hypocrisy was so blatant it was almost performance art. The real tipping point came when I discovered his endgame. I was working late one evening, a rare occurrence, when I saw an email pop up on a vacant computer next to mine. It was a calendar notification for Julian from a high-level executive recruiter at our biggest competitor. The subject: "Ray, your future at Omnicom." He wasn't just using my project to get a promotion. He was using it as an audition piece to jump ship for a bigger, better job. He was going to burn down the bridge and salt the earth behind him, taking all the credit and leaving Sterling and Finch to deal with the fallout when Phase 2 inevitably collapsed. That was when the last of my hesitation vanished. This wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about protecting the company and the clients he was actively deceiving. The next day, I found Evelyn. I brought 2 coffees to her cubicle in the quiet data analytics department. "I need to show you something," I said. We booked a small, windowless conference room. I opened my personal laptop and pulled up the file, the Echo Project Master 200 PGS, DocX. I said nothing. I just turned the screen toward her and let her read. I watched her eyes move across the pages, first with curiosity, then with dawning comprehension, and finally with cold, hard fury. She spent 20 minutes in complete silence, scrolling through the intricate strategies, the behavioral models, the detailed roadmap for Phase 2. When she finally looked up, her face was grim. "That bastard," she whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. "He didn't just steal your idea, Camilla. He stole the engine and left the car's empty shell on the lot. And now he's trying to drive it off a cliff," I added. "Phase 2 is launching in 2 weeks. Leo and Julian are about to present their strategy to Innovate Dynamics, our biggest client on this project. It's going to be a disaster." Evelyn leaned back, a thoughtful expression on her face. "The early data is already showing it," she said, almost to herself. "Engagement is flat. Sentiment analysis is trending negative. They're interpreting it as a temporary lull. I've tried to warn them, but they said my models were too pessimistic." "I need your help, Evelyn," I said, my voice steady. "I need a report. A full, undeniable kill shot of a report. One that shows not just that Phase 2 is failing, but precisely why it's failing and how it deviates from the project's original, successful blueprint." Evelyn's smile returned, but this time it was sharp and dangerous. "So that's the experiment," she said. "Consider it done. I'll have a data presentation ready that will leave no room for interpretation. It will be a thing of beauty, mathematical, impartial, and absolutely brutal." We had a plan. We had the evidence. All we needed was the stage. It came sooner than we expected. On Monday morning, a week before the planned launch, an urgent meeting request appeared in my inbox. The sender was the CEO of Innovate Dynamics. The attendees included their entire marketing board, our CEO Alina Vance, Julian, and Leo, and at the very bottom of the list me. The subject line was simple: "Urgent review, the Echo Project Phase 2. I looked across the office at Julian. He was on the phone, pacing, a confident smile on his face. He clearly thought this was a courtesy check-in. He had no idea he was walking into his own execution. The trap was set. The bait had been taken, and the client themselves had just volunteered to spring it. I forwarded the meeting invite to Evelyn with a single line. It's time. The boardroom on the 40th floor felt like a cold, sterile arena. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the tension in the air. At one end of the long mahogany table sat the team from Innovate Dynamics, their faces impassive. At the other sat Eleanor Vance, our CEO, a woman whose calm demeanor belied a formidable intellect. Julian and Leo were in the middle, shuffling papers, their confidence already starting to fray around the edges. I took a seat in the corner, away from the table, a deliberate choice to position myself as an observer. Evelyn wasn't invited, but her report was loaded onto a secure drive in my bag. Julian began the presentation. He was as smooth and polished as ever, his voice a confident baritone as he walked them through the Phase 2 strategy. He spoke of synergy and leveraging assets. He showed slides filled with images of glamorous celebrities and mock-ups of expensive, high-gloss ad campaigns. It was a presentation built on buzzwords and hubris, a hollow shell with nothing inside. He finished with a flourish, a slide displaying their new tagline, "Live the dream." Silence. It was broken by the CEO of Innovate Dynamics, a sharp woman named Maria Flores. She didn't look at the screen. She looked directly at Julian. "Julian," she began, her voice dangerously soft. "The reason we called this meeting is because we've been feeling a disconnect. The initial phase of this project resonated with our customers on a deeply personal level. It felt real. This," she gestured vaguely at the screen, "feels like every other luxury ad campaign we've ever seen. It's lost the magic." Leo, trying to be helpful, jumped in. But the data from Phase 1 showed that the celebrity endorsements were incredibly successful. We're simply building on that success. Maria Flores turned her gaze on him, and Leo seemed to shrink in his chair. "Is that what the data showed?" she asked, a note of challenge in her voice. "Because that's not what we were told in our initial discussions. We were told the core strength of the project was its authenticity, the focus on real stories." She paused, then delivered the killing blow. "That's certainly what Camilla Rhodes told us when she first walked us through the concept months ago." Every head in the room turned to look at me. The silence was now a physical presence. Julian's face, which had been a mask of confident charisma, was beginning to crumble. I could see the panic in his eyes. Eleanor Vance, who had been listening intently, spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Camilla," she said, her eyes locking onto mine, "perhaps you have something to add." This was it. The moment the entire game had been leading to. I stood up and walked to the head of the table, leaving my laptop behind. I didn't need slides. "The Echo project was never about celebrities," I began, my voice clear and steady. "It wasn't about selling a dream. It was about reflecting a truth. The Echo was the feeling our customers had when they saw their own stories, their own values, reflected in our brand. The celebrities were a megaphone, but the voice they were amplifying belonged to the community." I looked at Julian. Phase 2 was designed to be a deep dive into that community, to build a platform for more of those stories, to analyze the sentiment behind them, and to create a feedback loop of genuine connection. The strategy you've just seen presented isn't an evolution of Phase 1, it's an abandonment of it. Julian found his voice, sputtering with indignation. "This is absurd. Camilla was removed from the project for a reason. She couldn't execute. This is just sour grapes." "Is it?" I asked calmly. I pulled the secure drive from my bag and plugged it into the room's system. "I believe data tells a more objective story. Evelyn, our top analyst, prepared a report based on the early numbers from your proposed Phase 2 campaign tests." Evelyn's report lit up the screen. It was a brutal, elegant dissection of their failure. Charts showed user engagement plummeting. Sentiment analysis shifted from inspired and connected to disappointed and inauthentic. One slide directly compared the projected ROI of my original Phase 2 strategy against theirs. The difference was a staggering $50 million. But the final slide was the one I had asked her to create. It was a simple timeline. On one side, it listed key strategic documents from my master plan. On the other, it showed time-stamped emails from Leo to me, asking for clarification on the most basic principles of the project, weeks after he had supposedly taken it over. It was a perfect, undeniable record of their deception. The room was utterly still. Julian was pale, his bravado gone. Leo looked like he was about to be sick. Eleanor Vance stood up. "Julian, Leo, please wait for me in my office," she said. Her voice was ice. They fled the room like scolded children. She then turned to me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, respect. "Camilla, I believe you have a project to salvage." Julian and Leo were fired that afternoon. The next day, Eleanor called me to her office. She offered me Julian's job, senior vice president, I thought about the corner office, the title, the victory. It felt empty. It was the prize Julian had been chasing, a symbol of power and status. But I realized I didn't want his prize. I wanted to build something new. "Thank you, Alina," I said. "But I'm not a politician, I'm an architect. I don't want Julian's job, I want to create a new one." I laid out my proposal. I wanted to build a creative strategy lab, a small, agile team dedicated to pure innovation, free from the layers of corporate bureaucracy. A place where ideas were nurtured, not stolen. I would lead it, and I wanted Evelyn as my deputy. We would report directly to the CEO. No one else. Alina listened, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Done," she said. "Write your own job description. Give me your budget by Friday." My first act as head of the Creative Strategy Lab was to promote Evelyn and give her a 30% raise, with back pay for the 6 months she'd been undervalued. Her shocked, tearful gratitude was more satisfying than any promotion I could have received. 6 months later, our lab had become the most profitable and innovative department in the agency. We were a team of misfits and dreamers, a place where the only currency was a good idea. We launched a revised and expanded version of the Echo project that went on to win every major industry award. One afternoon, I received an email forwarded from HR. It was from Leo. He apologized for his role in the deception, admitting he had been blinded by ambition. I read it, felt a flicker of something, not forgiveness, but a kind of weary empathy, and then I deleted it. His story was no longer a part of mine. Julian, I heard, was struggling to find work. His reputation had been shattered. His name, once a synonym for success, was now a cautionary tale. I stood by the window of my new office, which was not a corner office, but a bright, open space connected directly to the lab. I watched my team laughing and arguing over a whiteboard filled with new, impossible ideas. The anger that had fueled me for so long was gone. The need for revenge had been replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. The victory wasn't in watching Julian fall. The victory was in the work we were doing now. It was in creating an environment where talent could thrive, where voices were heard, and where respect was the foundation of everything we built. Julian thought the game was about climbing a ladder. I had learned it was about building a whole new staircase and bringing the right people up with you. The sweetest revenge wasn't tearing someone down. It was building something better in their place. And as the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow over our work, I finally felt at peace. I was home.